Liv, please call me. Total disaster here. Venue flooded overnight from broken pipe. Everything ruined. Need your help desperately. I stared at the text message illuminating my phone screen against the ethereal backdrop of Iceland's midnight sun. The pale light filtered through the cottage window, casting long shadows across the wooden floor where I sat cross-legged with my morning coffee, or was it evening coffee? Time felt meaningless here in this land of perpetual daylight. 3,500 miles away from my sister's wedding catastrophe, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had excluded me from their perfect day, deemed my lifestyle inappropriate for their social circles, yet now suddenly needed the very skills they had so thoroughly dismissed. How did we get here? I thought, setting down my coffee cup next to my laptop as Amy's increasingly frantic messages filled my screen. When did my own family decide I wasn't worthy of witnessing my sister's vows? Another text appeared, this one a video message. Amy's face filled the screen, eyes red-rimmed, wedding makeup half streaked down her cheeks, the perfect bride facade crumbling in real time. Olivia, I know I don't deserve your help after everything. You were right. Bradley's family pressured me to keep the wedding appropriate, and I was too weak to stand up for you. I'm so sorry. Please, if you can find it in your heart to advise us remotely, I'd be eternally grateful. The genuine distress in her voice triggered something deep within me, those long-established big sister instincts that 15 years of protecting her couldn't easily erase. Despite my rational mind arguing against involvement, I stepped outside the cottage onto a small deck, breathing in the sulfur-tinged air while contemplating my response. Elisa's words from yesterday echoed. How we respond to those who hurt us reveals more about our character than their treatment reveals about our worth. Flashback, the discovery 6 months earlier. 6 months earlier, I had been scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break in Boston, still believing the lie about Amy's small, intimate wedding. My hands had frozen over my phone screen as cousin Megan's post appeared in my feed. The bridal shower looked like something out of a magazine, elaborate floral arrangements cascading down marble columns, personalized gift bags with Amy's and Bradley's initials embossed in gold, at least 30 women I recognized as distant relatives, college friends, and Bradley's family connections. The hashtag read, hash Amy's big day, hash Bradalblis, hash can't wait for the wedding. The caption read, such an amazing celebration for our beautiful bride-to-be. Only 3 weeks until the big day with 80-plus guests at the historic Pembroke Manor. Hash exclusive, hash family, 80-plus guests. The words blurred as tears welled up in my eyes. Budget constraints, Amy had said. Very small, just family and close friends. Mom had insisted. Yet here was photographic evidence of the elaborate celebration I had been systematically excluded from. I clicked frantically through the tagged photos, my heart sinking deeper with each image. Hotel blocks reserved at the Four Seasons. Welcome dinner invitations featuring our family crest. A wedding website with detailed information about the 3-day celebration, complete with a guest registry showing names I'd never heard of, Bradley's business associates, their parents' country club friends, even our neighbors who had moved in after I left for college. My hands trembled as I called Mom that evening, my voice carefully controlled despite the chaos raging inside me. Mom, I need to ask you something directly. Am I invited to Amy's wedding? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. When she finally spoke, her voice carried that particular tone she used when delivering news she knew would hurt. Sweetheart, they're keeping it very small. Amy thinks having you there might complicate things given your differences with Bradley's family. Maybe it's better this way, less pressure for everyone. Differences? I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer would devastate me. Another pause. Then, like a dam breaking, Bradley's family doesn't approve of your lifestyle choices, darling. They're very traditional and feel your career focus, urban living, and dating habits wouldn't align with the atmosphere they want to create. Amy didn't want to hurt your feelings, but she's trying to make a good impression on her new family. The words echoed in my empty Boston apartment long after I hung up, each syllable confirming my deepest fear, that my own family had deemed me unworthy of inclusion on one of their most important days, offering me up as a sacrificial lamb to appease my sister's future in-laws and their antiquated values. Flashback the gradual erosion. I should have seen the signs much earlier. 2 years prior, when Amy first brought Bradley home for Sunday dinner, I had been genuinely excited to meet the man who had captured my sister's heart. Bradley Harrington arrived in perfectly pressed khakis and a navy blazer, his blonde hair styled with the kind of precision that spoke of expensive salons and generational privilege. His smile was warm enough, his handshake firm, but there was something in his eyes, a calculating quality that assessed and categorized everything he encountered. "So, Olivia," he had said over Mom's pot roast, "Amy tells me you're in event planning. That must be interesting work." The pause before interesting should have warned me. "I specialize in high-end corporate events and celebrity weddings," I replied, pride evident in my voice. "Actually, I just finished planning the Anderson Pierce wedding that was featured in Vogue." "Ah yes, the wedding industry." Bradley set down his fork with deliberate precision. "It's certainly trendy right now, isn't it? Though I imagine it's quite unpredictable, feast or famine type of work. Have you considered transitioning into something more stable? Something with better long-term prospects?" Amy laughed, actually laughed, at his condescending assessment of my career. "Bradley's family is very practical about these things," she said, as if apologizing for me. "His father always says you need to think about sustainability in whatever field you choose." I felt my parents' eyes on me, waiting for my response. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably while Mom began collecting plates with unnecessary vigor. "I've been quite successful actually," I said evenly. "My client list is booked solid for the next 18 months, and I was recently featured in Business Insider's 30 Under 30 Entrepreneurs to Watch." "Oh, that's wonderful, dear." Bradley's mother, Charlotte, chimed in when she arrived for dessert. "But tell me, when do you think you'll settle down? Start focusing on building a real family life? All that career ambition is admirable for a young woman, but surely you must want something more traditional." Eventually, the conversation continued around me as if I had become invisible. Amy hung on every word Bradley's family said, nodding along as they discussed their vision for proper family dynamics, appropriate life choices, and the importance of maintaining certain standards. With each visit, I watched my vibrant, independent sister slowly transform into someone I barely recognized, someone who valued their approval more than our lifelong bond. Flashback, the engagement and early exclusions. The engagement announcement should have been a moment of pure joy. Amy called me on a Tuesday morning in March, her voice bubbling with excitement. "Liv," he proposed. "Can you believe it? We're engaged." I immediately cleared my schedule and flew home that weekend, arriving with champagne, handmade congratulatory signs, and a heart full of genuine happiness for my sister. The engagement party was everything Amy had dreamed of, elegant without being ostentatious, intimate yet celebratory. I mingled with family friends, shared embarrassing childhood stories about Amy, and even managed polite conversation with Bradley's relatives despite their barely concealed assessment of my current outfit choices and dating status. In my heart, I was already planning the perfect bachelorette weekend, researching bridesmaid dress options, and mentally preparing for my assumed role as maid of honor. Our history demanded it: years of shared secrets, mutual support through adolescent heartbreaks, and the unspoken understanding that we would always be there for each other's major life moments. That assumption crumbled exactly 1 month later during Sunday brunch at our parents' house. "Actually," Amy announced nervously after we'd finished discussing flower arrangements, "I've asked Megan to be my maid of honor." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I maintained my supportive smile while something fundamental cracked inside my chest. Megan, our cousin who lived 3 states away, who had missed half our family gatherings in the past 5 years, who Amy texted maybe twice a year. That's, that's wonderful," I managed to say. "I'm sure she'll do an amazing job." Amy's relief was palpable. "I knew you'd understand. Your work schedule is so unpredictable, and the planning responsibilities would be overwhelming for someone with your commitments. But I was hoping you could help with some of the logistics. You know, use your professional expertise to make sure everything runs smoothly." I nodded enthusiastically, desperate to be included in any capacity. "Of course. I'd love to help however I can. I have connections with some amazing vendors who'd probably give us family discounts." That night, I called my best friend Zoe and cried for 3 hours straight. She basically demoted you to wedding coordinator while giving your cousin the honor that should have been yours, Zoe said bluntly. This isn't about your schedule, Liv. Something else is going on here. But I convinced myself that being involved in any capacity was enough. I threw myself into research, compiling lists of vendors, venue options, and creative ideas that could make Amy's day truly special. I told myself that my professional expertise was more valuable than a title, that being useful was better than being honored. Little did I know this was just the first step in a systematic exclusion that would ultimately lead me to stand alone on an Icelandic glacier while my sister's carefully constructed wedding day crumbled from across the ocean. Flashback: the wedding planning meetings. 6 months before the wedding date, the exclusions became more obvious. Our parents hosted a Sunday brunch specifically to discuss wedding details. I arrived early, bearing wedding magazines flagged with innovative ideas and a portfolio of vendor contacts who had offered family discounts. Mom greeted me with her usual quick hug before turning her full attention back to Amy and Bradley, who were spread across the living room with laptops, fabric samples, and glossy brochures. "We're so excited about the venue," Amy gushed as I settled into an empty chair with my coffee. "The Pembroke Manor is absolutely gorgeous. It's been featured in Southern Living 3 times. The ballroom can accommodate up to 150 guests, but we're planning something much more intimate." "That sounds perfect," I said, opening my portfolio. "Actually, I have some great ideas for making smaller weddings feel really special. There are ways to personalize every element so guests feel—" "Actually," Bradley interrupted, not looking up from his laptop. "We've already hired Vanessa Mitchell to coordinate everything. My parents recommended her specifically. She's handled all the important weddings in our social circle." I recognized the name. Vanessa Mitchell charged triple what most wedding planners did and was known for her traditional, uninspired approach. Her events were flawless in execution, but completely lacking in personality or innovation. "Oh, that's great," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "Maybe I could share some ideas with her? I have connections with vendors who specialize in custom details that could really make your day unique." "We prefer traditional approaches for family events," Charlotte interjected with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Nothing too experimental. We want everything to be appropriate." The dismissal was subtle but unmistakable. I closed my portfolio and sat back, silently sipping my coffee while everyone continued discussing details without seeking my input. When I suggested a few simple ideas that wouldn't interfere with their coordinator's plans, they were politely acknowledged and immediately forgotten. "The guest list is our biggest challenge," Amy sighed. "We want to keep it small, maybe 60 people at most. Just family and our closest friends." Dad nodded approvingly. "It's better that way. More meaningful when it's intimate." "Exactly," Mom agreed. "No need for a big production. The important thing is celebrating your love with the people who matter most." I smiled and nodded along, already imagining how I could help create beautiful, personalized touches for their small gathering. But as the weeks progressed, the evidence of their small wedding began to contradict everything they told me. Flashback: the social media revelations. As spring turned to summer, my exclusion became impossible to ignore. I watched from afar as bridesmaids were announced through carefully curated Instagram posts. Amy posed with 5 women in matching pink robes, holding champagne glasses and sporting perfectly applied makeup. The caption read, "My girls. Can't wait to have these beautiful ladies by my side on the big day. Hash bridesmaids ready, wedding vibes. Hash love my girls." I recognized 3 of them: Megan, Amy's college roommate Sarah, and her coworker Jennifer. The other 2 were strangers to me, though their designer handbags and professional styling suggested they were from Bradley's social circle. Next came the engagement photo session, shot at the Pembroke Manor grounds. Amy looked radiant in a flowing white dress, Bradley handsome in a navy suit. But it was the caption that made my stomach clench. "Counting down the days until we say, 'I do' at this magical venue. 3 months and our closest family and friends will witness our love story. Hash engagement photos, Pembroke Manor, hash intimate wedding, 80 guests, 80 guests." The number haunted me for days. I read and reread the post, hoping I had misunderstood. But there it was, in Amy's own words, contradicting every conversation we'd had about their small, intimate celebration. My calls to Amy became increasingly brief and unsatisfying. Wedding planning is so stressful, she'd say, citing busy schedules before rushing off the phone. I can barely keep track of everything. Vanessa is handling most of the details anyway. March became April, then May. While other family members began mentioning travel arrangements and outfit selections, no invitation appeared in my mailbox. The gnawing anxiety grew stronger each day until I finally gathered the courage to text Amy directly. Hey sis, just wondering if I should book flights for the big day. Haven't received any details yet. Her response came hours later. Still finalizing some things. Venue has limited capacity and we're struggling with budget constraints. We'll let you know soon. The vague answer fed my growing unease. Bradley's family owned investment properties throughout New England. Budget constraints seemed highly unlikely for a family that had spent more on their engagement party than most people spend on their weddings. The painful truth, a week later, I finally confronted Mom directly. Mom, I need to know. Am I invited to Amy's wedding? The silence stretched between us, filled with everything she couldn't bring herself to say. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of a mother who knew she was failing one daughter to protect another. Sweetheart, they're keeping it very small. Amy thinks having you there might complicate things given your differences with Bradley's family. Maybe it's better this way, less pressure for everyone. What differences? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. Another painful pause. Then the truth, delivered like a diagnosis. Bradley's family doesn't approve of your lifestyle choices, darling. They're very traditional and feel your career focus, urban living, and dating habits wouldn't align with the atmosphere they want to create. Amy didn't want to hurt your feelings, but she's trying to make a good impression on her new family. I listened to Mom's explanation in stunned silence, each word confirming what I feared but refused to acknowledge. My own family had sacrificed my inclusion to appease people who found my very existence problematic. I was being punished for building a successful career, for living independently, for making choices that didn't conform to their narrow definition of acceptable womanhood. I understand, I said finally, throat tight with unshed tears. Of course, I get it. No problem at all. But it was a problem. It was the biggest problem I'd ever faced, because it forced me to confront the painful reality that my family valued others' approval more than my presence at one of their most important moments. Back to the present Iceland cottage, now, sitting in my Icelandic cottage with Amy's desperate messages illuminating my phone screen, I felt a strange sense of completion. I opened my laptop and set it up on the cottage deck, Iceland's otherworldly landscape stretching behind me as my backdrop. The contrast wasn't lost on me. Here I was, surrounded by ancient glaciers and volcanic beauty, about to save a wedding I'd been deemed unworthy to attend. When the video call connected, chaos greeted me. Amy appeared on screen in half-finished makeup, her wedding dress partially zipped, hair rollers still clinging to sections of her styling. Behind her, Mom paced frantically while Dad stood frozen in the background, clearly out of his depth. Bradley was arguing with someone off-screen about contract terms, his usually composed demeanor cracking under pressure. Everyone stop. I commanded, using the authoritative voice I'd developed through years of managing high-pressure events. One person speaks at a time. Amy, give me the exact situation. My sister's words tumbled out in a rush. The venue flooded overnight. Major pipe burst at 3 a.m. Water damage throughout the main ballroom. Vanessa quit yesterday after a fight with Charlotte about the floral arrangements. The caterer is demanding extra fees for relocation. The officiant has strep throat. Everything's falling apart, Liv. I don't know what to do. As Amy outlined the compounding disasters, I opened my professional contact list and began working while listening, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I sent rapid-fire messages to colleagues in Boston who owed me favors. First problem: venue. Call Westbrook Gardens immediately. The owner, Janet, is a client of mine. Tell her you're my sister and need emergency relocation for today. She mentions a couple cancellation yesterday due to rain concerns. She'll have the space available. While Amy frantically dialed, I continued strategizing. For catering, contact Maxwell's Premier. Ask for Tony directly, mention my name, and offer 15% above their normal rate for immediate service. They can mobilize a team within 4 hours for the right price. The officiant problem required more creativity. Bradley, your uncle is a judge, correct? He has legal authority to perform the ceremony. Have your father call him immediately. As I dispatched solutions from across the ocean, sipping Icelandic tea while a distant geothermal vent released steam behind me, I noticed Bradley's parents hovering at the edge of the video frame. Their expressions shifted visibly from disdain to reluctant appreciation as I efficiently untangled their catastrophe. Charlotte Harrington herself finally addressed me directly for the first time in 2 years. I must say, Olivia, you're handling this with remarkable competence. The backhanded compliment almost made me laugh. This is literally my profession, Mrs. Harrington, the one you considered inappropriate for someone associated with your family. The slight flinch in her perfectly Botox forehead provided a moment of quiet satisfaction before I returned to the logistics at hand. The salvation continues. For the next 3 hours, I orchestrated the most complex event rescue of my career. I called in every favor, leveraged every professional relationship, and utilized every contact in my network. Janet from Westbrook Gardens didn't just offer the venue, she provided her entire on-call staff to handle setup. Tony from Maxwell's Premier not only agreed to cater, but offered to coordinate with the florist to repurpose arrangements from another event ending that morning. Through my laptop screen, I watched the initial panic transform into cautious optimism. My professional network rose to the occasion with remarkable efficiency, proving just how substantial my industry connections truly were. Vendors who typically required weeks of advance notice were moving mountains to accommodate my sister's emergency. I can't believe how many people are dropping everything to help you, Amy marveled as confirmations flooded in. I had no idea your network was so extensive. Your sister has an impeccable reputation in this industry, Bradley said, his tone newly respectful. Everyone we've called knows her personally and speaks very highly of her work. I noticed how his parents' demeanor had shifted as well. The same woman who had suggested my career was merely a phase was now taking notes as I coordinated with suppliers she'd never heard of, solving problems with a level of expertise that clearly exceeded their expectations. When Janet sent photos of her staff already setting up the new venue, a garden estate arguably more beautiful than the original location, Amy burst into tears. These weren't tears of despair, but relief so profound it seemed to come from her very soul. Liv, I can't believe you're doing this for us, she said, her voice breaking. After everything. After how we treated you. We're not having that conversation now, I replied firmly. Right now, we focus on getting you married. Personal discussions come later. As vendors confirmed and solutions materialized, I created a revised timeline that would salvage all the essential elements while necessarily simplifying others. The day wouldn't be the elaborate production Amy had originally planned, but it would be beautiful, meaningful, and most importantly, it would happen. By mid-afternoon Icelandic time, with the Boston wedding now just hours away, the crisis had been largely averted. The ceremony would proceed at Westbrook Gardens. Catering was confirmed with an adjusted but elegant menu. Bradley's uncle had agreed to officiate, and the floral arrangements were being transported from the canceled event. I think we actually did it, Amy said, disbelief evident in her voice. You actually saved our wedding. Before ending the call, Amy asked everyone to leave her alone with me virtually. When we were finally in private, my sister's careful facade crumbled completely. I've been horrible to you, Liv. I let Bradley's family dictate who should be at my wedding, excluded my own sister to impress people who will never truly care about me the way you do. Can you ever forgive me? The reckoning, the question hung between us, spanning oceans and time zones, weighted with years of complicated family dynamics. Amy, I said carefully, I helped today because I love you. But helping you doesn't erase what happened. You chose their approval over our relationship, and that betrayal cut deeper than anything I've ever experienced. Tears flowed freely down her face, smearing her partially applied makeup. I know. I was weak. I wanted so badly to fit into Bradley's world, to be the perfect daughter-in-law, that I forgot what really mattered. I forgot you. It wasn't just about forgetting me, I continued, my voice steady despite the emotion underlying my words. You actively participated in my exclusion. You let them make me feel ashamed of choices I'm proud of, my career, my independence, my life in the city. You stood by while they treated me like I was somehow defective. You're right. God, you're so right. I became someone I don't even recognize. I was so desperate for their acceptance that I was willing to sacrifice yours. I looked at her through the screen, really looked at her. Despite the wedding chaos, despite the tear-streaked makeup, I could see glimpses of the sister I once knew. The vulnerable girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who trusted me with her deepest secrets, who once defended me fiercely against anyone who dared criticize me. I'm working on forgiveness, I said honestly. But Amy, you need to understand something. Trust isn't rebuilt in a single conversation. You made choices that showed me where I rank in your priorities. That doesn't disappear just because your wedding almost fell apart. She nodded, still crying. I know. I just hope. I hope this can be a beginning. A chance to prove that I can be the sister you deserve. We'll see, I replied. But right now, you need to get ready. Your wedding starts in 3 hours, and despite everything, you should look beautiful for the man you love. Amy's face brightened slightly through her tears. Liv, Iceland looks incredible on you. I can see something different in your eyes. Something. Peaceful? Flashback the decision to go to Iceland. She was right. Iceland had changed me fundamentally. The idea had germinated during one of my darkest moments, about a month after learning the truth about my exclusion. I'd spent weeks in a fog of hurt and anger, my usually meticulous work suffering as I struggled to focus. Friends noticed my withdrawal, with Zoe finally staging an intervention dinner at my apartment. You need to do something radical, she'd said, pouring wine with the determination of someone on a mission. This brooding isn't healthy. You're disappearing into yourself. Marcus, my colleague and close friend, had been even more direct. Take a sabbatical. Go somewhere completely unexpected. Shock your system out of this spiral. That night, unable to sleep, I found myself Googling travel destinations at 3 a.m. The algorithm served me images of Iceland's otherworldly landscapes, massive waterfalls cascading into volcanic canyons, black sand beaches stretching toward impossible horizons, the promise of northern lights dancing across summer skies. Something about those empty, beautiful spaces called to my wounded spirit. Go somewhere that makes family drama seem small. My therapist, Dr. Marshall, had suggested during our session that week. What could make human problems feel more insignificant than standing before nature's raw power? The idea took root, growing stronger each day. I researched flights, accommodations, and tour options with the same meticulous attention I applied to client events. I told no one about my plans, quietly requesting time off work and arranging for colleagues to cover my ongoing projects. 3 days before my departure, Mom's call had come, the desperate plea for help with their coordinator crisis. But I'd already made my choice. I'm afraid that won't be possible, I told her, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. I've made other plans for that weekend. I'm going to Iceland. The shocked silence on the other end felt almost worth the months of hurt. Iceland? But Olivia, this is your sister's wedding. Surely you can postpone a vacation? An olive branch would be an actual invitation, Mom, not a last-minute request for free professional services while still excluding me from the celebration. Iceland, the journey begins. The liberation of boarding that flight 2 days later had been indescribable. Each mile separating me from Boston felt like shackles falling away. Landing in Keflavik under an impossibly blue sky, I collected my rental car and began the drive toward Reykjavik, windows down despite the cool air, breathing deeply of atmosphere so crisp it almost hurt my lungs. The landscape unfolded around me like something from another planet. Vast fields of moss-covered lava rock stretched toward distant mountains, their peaks dusted with snow even in summer. Occasional sheep dotted the hillsides like tiny cloud puffs, and everywhere I looked, water seemed to be in motion, streams, waterfalls, geysers releasing steam into the pristine air. My guest house in Reykjavik welcomed me with Scandinavian simplicity. Christian, the owner, greeted me with homemade bread and recommendations for local experiences away from tourist crowds. "You're traveling alone?" he asked in accented English, examining my single bag. "Yes," I replied, the word carrying more weight than he could know. "Good," he said with approval. Iceland reveals herself differently to those who come without companions. She speaks more honestly to the solitary heart. That first evening, still adjusting to the disorienting midnight sun that painted everything in perpetual golden hour light, I joined a group dinner where fellow travelers shared their stories over Arctic char and roasted vegetables. Among them was Elisa, a 34-year-old local guide with intricate tattoos circling both wrists and a laugh that seemed to emerge from somewhere ancient and knowing. "You're here for the full experience?" she asked, pouring me more of the local Brennivan spirit that tasted like liquid fire and herbs. When I nodded, she continued, "Good. Too many visitors see only the postcard version of Iceland. They take photos at the famous waterfalls, check the northern lights off their bucket list, and leave without understanding what this place really offers." Learning I had 5 days in her country, Elisa offered to show me places most Americans never see, an invitation I gratefully accepted, sensing she understood something about solitary journeys that I desperately needed to learn. Iceland, the Valley of Thor. The following morning, Elisa arrived in a rugged jeep that looked capable of conquering any terrain. "Today we visit Arisamerk," she announced, tossing my small suitcase in the back with instructions to bring only essentials. The Valley of Thor. It's a place that demands you leave everything else behind. As we left the city, crossing rivers and navigating rocky paths that barely qualified as roads, Elisa shared pieces of her own story. Her decision to become a wilderness guide instead of joining her father's fishing business had created a rift that took years to heal. "Sometimes the hardest thing," she observed as we bounced across a particularly rough section, "is staying true to yourself when those who should support you most try to reshape you into their idea of who you should be." Her words resonated through my chest like a bass drum I could feel but not hear. For the first time in months, I felt truly understood by someone who knew nothing about my family drama, but everything about choosing an unconventional path. Arisamerk revealed itself gradually as we climbed higher, finally opening into a lush valley nestled between three glaciers. The vibrant green was shocking against the black volcanic soil and snow-capped mountains that surrounded us like protective giants. Hiking through this landscape felt like walking through the pages of ancient mythology, each step carrying me further from the pettiness of human disappointments. At one point, standing breathless at the edge of a canyon with a massive waterfall thundering in the distance, Elisa pointed toward the cascading water. "Icelanders believe water carries away what no longer serves us," she said. "What would you like that water to take from you today?" Without hesitation, I answered, "The need for approval from people who cannot see me clearly." She nodded approvingly, as if I'd passed some unspoken test, before leading me closer to the thundering water where the constant mist created perfect rainbows in the eternal sunlight. That evening, we joined three other travelers at a remote cabin where Elisa prepared traditional Icelandic lamb soup while northern winds rattled the windows. Sophie from Canada, Miguel from Spain, and Jens from Germany each shared stories of family expectations and the freedom found in distance. Miguel especially understood my situation. He'd been excluded from his brother's wedding after coming out 2 years earlier. "Family thinks they reject parts of us they don't understand," he reflected, firelight dancing across his angular face. "But they really reject parts of themselves they fear." Under a sky that never fully darkened, our conversation continued until dawn, strangers becoming confidants through shared vulnerability and the peculiar intimacy that travel creates between souls seeking similar truths. Iceland, the glacier. My third day brought the most transformative experience yet. A hike across Slamical Glacier, with Elisa leading the way and crampons strapped to our boots, ice axes in hand like medieval weapons against the ancient ice. The glacier stretched before us like a frozen river, its surface scarred by crevasses that revealed brilliant blue depths where centuries of compressed time lay waiting. "Ice remembers everything," Elisa explained as we picked our way across the shifting surface, pointing to sediment layers visible in the glacier's walls. "It holds the past but keeps moving forward, always changing shape. It never stays the same, but it never forgets where it came from." Standing small against that massive flowing ice river, my family drama suddenly seemed microscopic, a a momentary blip in the vast timeline of geological existence. The glacier had been here for thousands of years, shaping the landscape with patient persistence, caring nothing for human squabbles and social hierarchies. At one point, Elisa called for a rest near a particularly deep crevasse. We sat on the ice, sharing thermoses of coffee while the glacier groaned and shifted beneath us with sounds like whale songs translated through frozen water. "Tell me about home," she said quietly. I found myself explaining the whole situation: Amy's engagement, the gradual exclusions, the lie about the small wedding, the brutal truth about why I wasn't wanted. Elisa listened without interruption, her dark eyes reflecting understanding that went beyond words. "In Iceland, we have a saying," she finally said. "Al reddest, it will work out. But not in the way you expect, and not when you want it to. The ice teaches us this. It moves so slowly you cannot see the change, yet it carves valleys, creates lakes, reshapes entire landscapes. Transformation takes time, and it often requires us to become something harder before we can flow again." That evening, we drove to a location far from any artificial light, bundled in thermal layers despite the summer season. If we're lucky, Elisa promised, checking her phone for aurora forecasts, the lights might dance for us even in June. Summer auroras are rare but more precious for their scarcity. Fortune smiled as faint green wisps gradually strengthened across the northern sky, undulating like silk curtains hung by gods. I watched in awestruck silence as the lights pulsed and swirled above us, their ghostly dance both humbling and healing. Tears froze on my cheeks, but I didn't wipe them away. They felt like a baptism in the cosmic display. Under those dancing lights, surrounded by new friends who accepted me without conditions or expectations, I felt something long constricted in my chest finally release. The universe was too vast, too wondrous for me to remain small beneath human rejection. My worth wasn't determined by guest lists or family approval. It existed independently, like the northern lights themselves, beautiful whether witnessed or not. "Tomorrow is your sister's wedding," Elisa noted softly as the lights gradually faded back to whispers. "How do you feel about that now?" I considered the question seriously, searching my heart for honest answers. Like I'm exactly where I need to be. Back to present, the wedding day crisis. And now, here I was, proving that my exclusion had been their loss, not mine. As the video call with Amy ended and I closed my laptop, I realized she had been right about something changing in my eyes. Iceland had stripped away layers of self-doubt and people-pleasing that I'd carried for 28 years. The woman who boarded the plane in Boston, desperate for family approval, willing to diminish herself for inclusion, was not the same woman who would return. I spent the rest of that day hiking alone through landscapes that defied description, photographing vistas not to share on social media, but to preserve in my memory. As evening approached, though the sun never truly set, I treated myself to dinner at a small restaurant where the chef personally explained each course, taking pride in ingredients foraged from the very landscape I'd been exploring. While Amy walked down the aisle in Boston, I sat by Lake Mvatten watching swans glide across water that perfectly reflected the volcanic peaks surrounding it. I felt no bitterness, no resentment, only a profound sense of rightness about my choice to be here instead of there. Returned to Boston. 2 weeks later, I returned to a Boston that looked the same but felt different. My apartment, which had seemed like a refuge before Iceland, now felt smaller somehow. Not cramped, exactly, but limited in scope compared to the vast horizons I'd grown accustomed to. The city sounds that once comforted me seemed unnecessarily urgent, everyone rushing toward destinations that suddenly felt less important than they once had. The text from Mom came on my second day back, a formal request for my presence at Sunday dinner to discuss recent events. The wording was uncharacteristically careful, signaling the importance they attached to this gathering. Despite my instinct to decline, Dr. Marshall encouraged me to attend with my newly established boundaries intact. "You've changed through this experience," she reminded me during our session. "Now is your opportunity to demonstrate that change, not to them, but to yourself." Arriving at my parents' Connecticut home exactly on time rather than my usual 15 minutes early felt like a small but significant rebellion. I noted 4 cars in the driveway. Mom, Dad, Amy, and Bradley were all present. The knowledge that I would face the complete assembly of those who had excluded me sent adrenaline coursing through my system. But something else accompanied it now, a steadying confidence born from standing alone on Icelandic cliffs and surviving. Mom opened the door with nervous energy, her typical quick hug replaced by an awkward hovering as if unsure of her welcome in my space. I moved past her with calm purpose, entering the living room where everyone waited in uncomfortable silence. Dad stood immediately, uncertainty etched across his usually confident features, while Amy and Bradley remained seated on the sofa with hands tightly clasped. The body language in the room spoke volumes. They had clearly discussed strategy, practiced talking points, prepared for this confrontation. Olivia, my father began, using my full name as he did in serious moments. We're very glad you came. The implied surprise that I would actually show up spoke volumes about how they viewed my legitimate hurt, as petulance rather than justified response to genuine betrayal. The family confrontation, in earlier times, I might have immediately worked to ease their discomfort. Iceland transformed. Olivia instead took the armchair facing everyone, set down her purse with deliberate movements, and waited. The silence stretched uncomfortably until Mom attempted her standard deflection. Well, this has all been quite dramatic, hasn't it? But family is family, and we should put these little misunderstandings behind us. The dismissive characterization of my systematic exclusion as a little misunderstanding might once have made me question my own perceptions. Now it merely confirmed how necessary my emotional distance had become. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Mom, I stated calmly. You all made deliberate choices to exclude me from a significant family event, then lied about the reasons. I'd appreciate it if we could at least acknowledge that reality before attempting to move forward. My directness visibly startled them, particularly my father, whose discomfort with emotional confrontation had always been pronounced. Amy shifted uncomfortably beside Bradley, who seemed to be seeing me clearly for the first time. Amy spoke next, her voice small but determined. Olivia's right. We need to be honest about what happened. She turned toward me, shoulders squared despite her evident anxiety. I allowed Bradley's family to influence who should be included in my wedding because I was desperate for their approval. I prioritized their judgment over our relationship, and I justified it with excuses instead of having the courage to tell you the truth. Bradley surprisingly added his own acknowledgement. My family has very traditional views about success and life choices, particularly for women. They saw your career focus and independent lifestyle as somehow threatening to their values. I should have challenged their perspective instead of enabling their judgment, especially after seeing how brilliantly you handled our wedding crisis. His admission appeared genuine, though I noted it still placed primary blame on his family rather than his own participation in my exclusion. Mom attempted to redirect with practiced skill. Well, we all make mistakes in family dynamics. Remember when Grandma excluded Aunt Sarah from that Thanksgiving after the political argument? These things happen in every family. The false equivalence and attempt to normalize serious hurt triggered the precise, measured response I'd practiced with Dr. Marshall. This wasn't a universal family experience, Mom. This was a specific choice to exclude me because my life doesn't conform to some narrow definition of acceptable womanhood. You chose their comfort over your daughter's inclusion, then misled me about the real reasons. That requires more than dismissing it as normal family drama. Dad, who had remained characteristically silent, suddenly straightened his posture. Olivia is right. His unexpected intervention silenced the room. We failed her completely. I failed you, Olivia. I stayed quiet when I should have insisted my daughter be included in her sister's wedding regardless of anyone's disapproval. My silence made me complicit. His voice broke slightly on the last word, showing emotion unprecedented from my usually stoic father. The acknowledgement created a small crack in my carefully maintained composure, but I held firm to the boundaries I'd established. The long conversation. We spent the next 2 hours in the most honest conversation our family had ever experienced. Painful truths emerged about long-established patterns of favoritism, conformity pressures, and conflict avoidance that had shaped our family dynamic for decades. I maintained clear boundaries throughout, neither accepting insufficient explanations nor allowing the discussion to devolve into unproductive guilt spirals. I need you all to understand, I said during a particularly intense moment, that what happened wasn't just about missing a party. You communicated to me that my choices, my career, My way of living somehow made me unsuitable to be seen by people you wanted to impress. That cuts to the core of who I am as a person. Amy's tears were genuine as she responded, I know. I see that now. I became so focused on being the perfect bride, the perfect daughter-in-law, that I forgot to be a good sister. The irony, I continued, is that the very skills you found embarrassing enough to exclude me over were the same skills that saved your wedding when everything fell apart. When Bradley mentioned his sister Catherine's upcoming engagement and her interest in having me plan the wedding, I recognized the offer as both olive branch and implicit acknowledgement of my professional value. I appreciate the consideration, I responded carefully. My schedule books months in advance, but she's welcome to contact my office formally. The subtle repositioning of our relationship from excluded family member to sought-after professional whose time carried premium value wasn't lost on anyone present. Charlotte Harrington would now have to formally request services from the woman she dismissed as inappropriate for their social circle. As the conversation drew toward its natural conclusion, Amy suggested family therapy sessions, an idea so unprecedented in our conflict-avoiding household that it signaled genuine desire for change. I found individual therapy extremely valuable, I offered, meeting her halfway without overcommitting. I would consider joining family sessions if everyone participates fully. Even more surprising was my father's immediate agreement, followed reluctantly by my mother's. Private moment with Amy. Before leaving, Amy and I shared a moment alone in the kitchen. The familiar setting, the same counter where we'd done homework together, the breakfast nook where we'd shared countless bowls of cereal before school, highlighted how much had changed between us. I found your travel photos on Instagram, she admitted quietly. Iceland looks incredible. Those northern lights, did they really look like that in person? The simple question opened a brief connection around something unrelated to our conflict. Actually, they were more beautiful than any photo could capture. The lights seemed alive somehow, dancing across the sky in patterns that defied logic or description. For a flickering moment, we were just sisters again, sharing wonder about something beyond our immediate drama. Amy reached tentatively for my hand. I miss you, Liv. Not just now, but for the past couple years. I let myself become someone I don't recognize, someone who valued appearance over authenticity, approval over love. I squeezed her fingers briefly before gently withdrawing. I miss the person I thought you were too. But Amy, this isn't something that gets fixed in one conversation. Trust takes time to rebuild, and it requires consistent actions, not just words. I understand, she said. I just want the chance to prove I can be better. The sister you deserve. We'll see, I replied honestly. But know this, I helped with your wedding because I love you, not because I've forgotten what happened. Those are two separate things. Leaving and reflection. Walking to my car that evening, I realized something profound. While Iceland had given me perspective on my family's treatment, it had offered something even more valuable. A clear vision of who I could be when freed from the constant pressure of seeking approval from those unwilling to truly see me. The woman who had left for Iceland 6 months ago would have stayed late at that dinner, working overtime to smooth tensions and make everyone comfortable. This woman had said what needed saying, set clear boundaries, and left when the conversation reached its natural end. I didn't need their approval anymore. That realization was both liberating and slightly melancholy. It meant leaving behind a version of myself that had defined so much of my identity for so long. 6 months later, the new normal. 6 months have passed since that fateful wedding weekend. The holiday season approaches with its inevitable family gatherings and potential tensions, but I face them with newfound equanimity. The most unexpected development came last week when Elisa arrived at Boston Logan Airport for her first visit to America, staying in my guest room for 2 weeks before we embark on our return journey to Iceland during winter solstice. I want to see those northern lights again, I told her during our planning calls, but this time at their winter peak. And I want to stand on that same glacier, feeling small against something ancient and enduring. Our family therapy sessions continue monthly, each one uncovering layers of unspoken expectations and slowly healing old wounds. Progress comes unevenly, 2 steps forward during honest breakthroughs, 1 step back when old patterns resurface. Mom still occasionally makes comments about my unusual lifestyle choices, but now catches herself mid-sentence, making visible efforts to understand rather than judge. Dad, surprisingly, has become my most consistent ally, calling weekly just to check in. His newfound emotional availability represents a welcome evolution in our relationship. He recently confessed that watching me handle the wedding crisis from Iceland with such professional command made him see me as a fully actualized adult for the first time. I've always been proud of you, Olivia, he admitted during a rare one-on-one lunch. But I never properly expressed it because I didn't fully understand your world. I do now. The professional fallout from the wedding fiasco brought unexpected opportunities. Catherine Harrington did indeed hire me for her upcoming wedding, her substantial budget and high-profile guest list opening doors to an even more exclusive clientele. More significantly, through Catherine's connections, I landed Miranda Falcone, the tech industry billionaire, as a client for her foundation's annual gala. The event's success led to a profile in Business Insider highlighting my crisis management expertise and unparalleled vendor relationships. The irony that the family who had deemed my career inappropriate were now using my professional successes to elevate their own social standing wasn't lost on me. Amy and I have established a fragile new connection, different from our childhood closeness, but potentially more honest. During a recent afternoon shopping together, our first such outing in years, she confessed that her marriage to Bradley requires more compromise than she had anticipated. Sometimes I look at your freedom and wonder what I've given up, she admitted as we shared coffee afterward. Rather than offering platitudes, I acknowledged the complexity of her feelings. Every choice closes certain doors while opening others. The question is whether you're choosing based on your authentic desires or others' expectations. We're learning to have these more substantial conversations, replacing the surface chatter that previously masked our growing differences. It's not the easy, uncomplicated relationship we once shared, but it might become something more meaningful, a connection between two women who understand the cost of their choices. The friendship with Elisa. My friendship with Elisa has evolved through regular video calls and shared book recommendations. Her perspective as someone who rebuilt a damaged family relationship offers practical wisdom during difficult moments. Family healing isn't linear. She reminded me last month when a therapy session left me feeling frustrated. It spirals like our Icelandic weather, sometimes returning to familiar storms before clearing again. Having her here in Boston has been revelatory. She sees my city through fresh eyes, pointing out beauty I'd stopped noticing, the way morning light hits the Charles River, the architectural details of buildings I pass daily without seeing. Her presence reminds me that perspective is everything, that the same landscape can appear foreign or familiar depending on who stands beside us. Your family is trying, she observed after joining us for Sunday dinner last week. But they're still afraid of you, afraid of the woman you've become. Afraid of me? Why? Because you don't need them anymore. You've proven you can build a life, solve problems, find happiness without their approval. That's threatening to people who define themselves through control and conformity. Internal transformation. Perhaps the most profound change remains internal. The unshakable certainty that my worth exists independently from family approval or inclusion has become the bedrock of my new existence. I recently declined a family beach weekend that conflicted with a personal retreat I'd planned, something pre-Iceland Olivia would never have dared. I'll catch you next time, I stated simply, without elaborate justifications or apologies. The freedom in that boundary setting felt more exhilarating than any professional achievement. I no longer needed to apologize for choices that served my well-being or justify decisions that put my needs first. Last night, standing on my apartment balcony beneath Boston's light-polluted sky where stars struggle for visibility, I found myself thinking about that night under Iceland's dancing auroras. The universe had offered a powerful metaphor. Sometimes we must remove ourselves from familiar but dim surroundings to witness true brilliance. Being excluded from my sister's wedding initially felt like the ultimate rejection, but it ultimately propelled me toward the most significant self-acceptance of my life. The painful exclusion created space for extraordinary inclusion in experiences and relationships that truly honored my authentic self. Final reflection. As I look toward future family gatherings, I carry this truth. We cannot control others' capacity to value our presence, but we can absolutely refuse to diminish ourselves to earn seats at tables that should welcome us without condition. This journey has taught me that sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves, and ultimately for our relationships, is to walk away from spaces where we're expected to make ourselves smaller. The path back, if there is one, must be walked with equal dignity on both sides. My phone buzzes with a text from Amy. Looking forward to seeing you and Elisa at Christmas dinner. Mom's making your favorite dessert. It's a small gesture, but meaningful acknowledgement that my preferences matter, that my guest is welcome, that my presence is actively desired rather than grudgingly accepted. I type back, we'll be there. Elisa's excited to experience an American Christmas. The exchange feels normal, natural, sisters making plans without underlying tension or unspoken resentments. Maybe that's what healing looks like. Not the dramatic reconciliation of movies, but small moments of genuine connection built on mutual respect and honest acknowledgement of past wounds. Iceland taught me that ice remembers everything but keeps moving forward, always changing shape. My family relationships are transforming in similar ways, carrying the weight of our history while slowly adapting to new realities, new boundaries, new possibilities for connection. The Northern Lights will dance again this winter, and I'll be there to witness them with someone who understands that true belonging doesn't require us to dim our own light. In the cosmic display of Aurora Borealis, I found a metaphor for the kind of life I want to live: beautiful, independent, spectacular in its authenticity, visible whether witnessed or not. Sometimes being excluded from one story makes space for us to write a better one. My Icelandic journey began as an escape from rejection, but became an adventure in self-discovery. I wouldn't trade those frozen moments of clarity for all the wedding invitations in the world. The universe, it turns out, has its own guest list, and on it, we're all invited to be exactly who we are.